One of the most common struggles and challenges that people face, especially when they're stressed, is dealing with anxiety. Anxiety is there constantly for many people and it's hard to shake off. We don't know how to deal with it. And I'm going to explain one of the main reasons why we struggle to deal with it and a technique that will help you to address it directly. Before we get into it, I'm Desh. I'm a qualified counselor. I have many years of experience of working with clients across a whole wide range of problems related to mental health. The reason anxiety is particularly challenging is because it recruits not only our logic but our emotions. It recruits both aspects of our brain. We end up thinking a lot about the things we're anxious about. We end up being lost in our thoughts. We end up with endless thoughts. When we have these thoughts, they lead us to feel even more anxious, helpless, hopeless, even desperate for a change. We just don't know what to do. And the thing is, because we're lost in our head with the logic and we're trying to problem solve and find out answers to the thoughts that we're having, we're not paying enough attention normally to how we feel. We just feel the sense of hopelessness and dread, but we're not addressing that aspect. This is why anxiety is so tricky, because we get so lost in our thoughts and we're looking for the solution to the problem that we're not spending enough time with our emotions and just accepting that we feel that way. And it is often through the acceptance and sitting with it where the actual true solution lies. Another reason anxiety is so powerful and potent is because it can hijack us. We can't do anything to counteract it. We end up engaging in behaviors that help us to avoid the pain and frustration that we experience. And we often come back, even from a period of temporary relief, coming back to the same issue that we're faced with. And we feel even more helpless and not capable, not worthy. And we can end up very quickly catastrophizing as a result of that. So, the strategy that I want to share with you is quite an effective one. And the reason it's effective is because it recruits the logical side of the brain, which is what the majority of people tend to favor. We tend to favor strategies that we can use that help us to counter a problem or figure out a problem using our logic rather than having to sit with our emotions. Now, it's crucial to sit with your emotions because that's half the puzzle. But now I'm going to share with you a more logical approach that you can take. The next time you have an anxious thought or thoughts that are causing anxiety within you and making you feel helpless, ask yourself 3 questions. What evidence is there to support that this thought is true? What is a more balanced way or realistic way of thinking about this? And what would I say to a friend who's going through the same thing? So, what evidence is there? This allows you to challenge the thought you have and look for concrete evidence that exists in reality to support whether this thought is true. Oftentimes, the thoughts that we have, particularly when they are a result of the anxiety we experience, are often quite extreme versions of what's really going on. So we may not find a lot of evidence to support it. And if there's no evidence to support a thought, then is it worth our time and attention? To get a more balanced view, this requires you scaling back from the intensity of the thought and the way it's making you feel, scaling back and just to see the bigger picture, like what else is going on? I'm spending all of my time focusing on this thought, but what else is happening? Also, what would I say to a friend that's having this thought? How would I feel if my friend had this thought? Would I think it's too extreme? Would I think that they're spending too much time focusing on the wrong thing? So again, it just helps you to step out of your current state and think about, if someone else was going through this, what would I advise them or what would I tell them? So when there's a particular thought that we attach to, we call it catastrophic thinking because we think of the worst case scenario. So a good example is if you have to give a presentation at work. So I'm going to mess up this presentation. Everyone's going to think I'm incompetent. My boss will realize I don't know what I'm doing. I may even lose my job. My whole career is at risk if I make one mistake. So that's an example of catastrophic thinking. So this is where the questions come in. So the first question to ask is, what evidence is there to support that this thought is true? So who else in the organization has been fired for making one mistake giving a presentation? Has there been anyone like that? Is that the company's culture? Is that the way your boss is? So really thinking about what are the likelihood that this thought I'm having is real or could potentially happen. So this is where it helps you just to step back and look at the thought objectively and think, what is the evidence? The second question to ask yourself is to what other alternatives are there? What is a more balanced way of viewing this situation? So, for example, this is where reframing the thought really helps. So, I might feel nervous and I might even make a mistake during this presentation, but that doesn't mean that I'll fail or everyone's going to think badly of me. Even if I make a mistake, I can recover, and most people probably won't notice. And am I really going to allow myself to be defined by one presentation? Am I really going to let it impact me that much? So, by again scaling back from the anxious thought and the way it's impacting you emotionally, this can help you to think of the wider picture and detach yourself from those really intense emotions you might be experiencing. The third thing to ask is if a friend is having the same thoughts I have, what would I advise them? And to be truthful, there's many things you can tell them. First of all, to acknowledge their feelings. I can see you're feeling overwhelmed. It sounds like you're really worried about what could happen. So you're acknowledging where they're coming from and then to challenge them on it. I get that this feels really big, but let's take a moment to think about what could realistically happen. Like, do you think it's likely that one mistake or one situation would have such extreme consequences? What's the worst thing that could happen, and how likely is that to happen? Did it turn out as badly as you imagined? And then you can encourage a more balanced perspective on things. Like, even if things don't go perfectly, even if you do make a mistake, it doesn't mean that your career is ended or that your life is ruined. It's often easier to help others who are going through what we are because we have the benefit of not experiencing the emotions they do. We come from it from a purely logical perspective. And that's what my strategy in this video has been all about approaching the problem through a logical lens. The reason I'm not focusing on emotions in this video is because that is a journey. You cannot, from watching this video, cope with anxiety from the emotional perspective unless you sit with your emotions and sit with the discomfort. And I've done many videos on discomfort because it's such an important and underspoken about area of how can we sit with the emotional discomfort that we have. Many people try to run away from it, but you need to sit with it because the truth is we are going to face situations in life that are going to bring up challenging emotions within us. And if we are not comfortable sitting with our emotions, we're going to run away from it. And we're therefore running away from the problem. We therefore stay stuck in the same cycle when we don't sit with how we're feeling, when we don't learn to be more comfortable, more familiar with the emotions we're experiencing. So I'm not going to tell you that, hey, if you watch this video, you'll never feel anxious again. No, the reality is you are going to keep feeling anxious again, time after time after time. But with enough practice and self-grace and the willingness to sit with the emotions you're experiencing, you will feel the impact of it becoming less and less and less to the point where your resilience will have become so strong that the same issue that you're worried about today, with enough practice and consistency, will be like nothing later on. The thought is still there, they don't go away, but the anxiety response within you will be far less because you've developed a skill set to deal with it. I want to finish by saying that anxiety in itself is not a bad thing. It's a crucial thing for us, and it means different things for different people. It's simply a communicator of an underlying need that we have, and often an underlying need that's not being met. So by taking the time to understand the impact that anxiety has on you and what emotions come, you'll be better able to understand the underlying need and get to the root cause of the problem. Share in the comments what catastrophic thoughts you might have and what ways you've gone about dealing with them. I would love to know. Please like and subscribe for more content coming out soon.